Hello, good morning. So I got a good email yesterday. My friend Tim Grimes, whose channel I will link to below, is also going to make a video on this topic. And we haven't discussed it with each other, so you'll probably get a pretty different perspective from him, which will also be valuable. So I think that will probably be posted by the time this is. So I will grab that link and put it in the description here. So here's the email. From an analytical standpoint, I get and accept that beliefs shape one's reality, but I still struggle to fully believe that it's all from your mind. I still feel there is an element of outside randomness that one simply has to deal with. The reason that I struggle with this is because there's a major example from my life of something coming out of nowhere, something really good and beautiful at a time where my life and my self-concept was honestly at rock bottom. If it's true that reality is all a reflection of one's mind, then I don't understand how this good thing came to me, especially at this most darkest of times. This was some years ago when I had just left home to study at university. I'd had an emotionally traumatic upbringing, so my trust of people had never been great. At that point, I'd also just experienced a really painful event of being misused by someone sexually. I was in a very dark place where I felt completely broken, and I felt I had no intrinsic worth. And it was at this point in my life that I met my now husband. Right from the beginning, he was unwaveringly loving and kind. He never played games, never made me feel like I had to be something else, even though I was in this dark hole. It was always just love. If anything, I was trying to push him away, trying to put him off, kind of to prove to myself that good things like that don't happen to me, and that good men like this don't want someone like me, and yet he stuck around. I gave him plenty of opportunities to leave, and I truly believed he would, but he always held fast. Eventually, slowly, I allowed myself to trust him, to let him in, and he's honestly the best thing to have happened in my life. His love has been the bedrock from which I've been able to heal and rebuild myself. Now, 15 plus years later, I'm in an infinitely better place. I've done a lot of work to rebuild my self-concept, and I now know that I'm deserving of the love that I've received. I'm so grateful that he came into my life when he did, and that he had the patience and kindness I needed to heal. It still perplexes me that he found me, but I'm so glad that he did. But from a manifestation point of view, I'm really not sure what to make of this. I just don't see how this could have come from me. I don't understand how this good and beautiful thing could come to me when I didn't even really understand what love was, unless it's something completely external to me. I'd be interested to hear your take on this, because this is the example I keep coming back to when I try to think about how everything is created by my mind. With negative experiences, that's easier to trace back to some limiting belief or something, but when it's something so positive, I just don't see how that came from me. So there is a lot to unpack here, and I love this. This is such a good email. There's so much good stuff in here. And I think that probably a lot of people in the manifestation community have had questions like this, because I'm pretty sure every single one of us has at least something good that's come out of a really, really bad time in our life. I know that I have. However, this doesn't... to me, this isn't any kind of refutation of anything. And the main overall thing that I'll say, and I'll just start with, is that you know, what you may think you believe is betrayed by what actually happens in your life. What often the only way you really know what you believed is to look back on the circumstances that showed up and the actions that you took. And it's the actions in this email that tell me that it's not the law that didn't work here. It's just a mistaken impression of what the underlying beliefs of this person were at the time. And this is just my opinion. I don't know these people. I don't know anything about this story beyond what I just read to you. That's it. So when I look at this story, I see somebody who is saying that they didn't believe anything good could happen for them, I guess. She didn't say that, actually, but the gist of it is, you know, I was at the worst place in my life, and I'm assuming implied there is all of my beliefs about things were bad. But in order to even take a chance on this situation, in order to even perceive this person that was there and available for this relationship, there had to be some beliefs supporting that, or it just wouldn't have happened at all. It just wouldn't have ever come into any kind of existence. First of all, she probably wouldn't have even noticed him. And second of all, even if she had, if there was really truly a belief in there, like really a belief that I am worthless and that no good man would ever want me and all of that, if that was really there, I don't think a person with those beliefs would have allowed this person, we'll call them Jack and Diane, okay? I don't think Diane would have allowed Jack to have even the slightest opportunity to hurt her, because, you know, this is kind of like an iconic tale here. This is sort of like a fairy tale story. And that's another thing, really. You know, you can be in a pretty bad way and still, via having been exposed to culture or anything, you know, or stories or just whatever, and there's a million possibilities. You could still be in the back of your mind and in your heart believing, you know, sometimes things do work out for people. Sometimes a knight in shining armor does rescue the damsel in distress. So that alone, I mean, you really just have to look at what happened in order to determine what allowed it to be created. That's my official stance on the beliefs create reality thing. Unfortunately and frustratingly, a lot of the time you can only figure out you can only get a clue about what you're thinking or believing based on what you're seeing in your circumstances. So like this emailer was saying, you know, with negative experiences, that's easier to trace back to some limiting belief or something. When something is when you have a pattern occurring, that's where I think you stand the best chance of being able to figure out what it is that you're believing that's causing that to occur. But even then, I personally have found it difficult to be able to ferret out what it is a lot of the time. And that's why my advice to everybody, which you should take with a grain of salt, although it is good advice, my advice to anybody always is decide who and what you want to be. If you're in a position, you know, if you're in a low position or a position where you have a pattern that continues to repeat, decide what you want to be. You, not what you need to be in order to get something out there. Decide what you want to be and make your intention for that. And make your intention, all you have to do is intend. Make your intention to understand what it is in your psychology and your thought processes that are creating the external reality that you don't want. Trying to figure it out a lot of the time is just futile. So, but another thing about this, so the thing I think that is really confusing for a lot of people about a story like this is how did Jack even show up in Diane's reality in the first place? It sounds to me like this all happened from, you know, not from a manifestational standpoint. Like, she wasn't trying to make this happen. It sounds like. I mean, again, I only have like these 2 paragraphs to go off, but it sounds like she wasn't, you know, in the know about attempting to intentionally, through manifestational techniques, create a relationship. This sounds just like somebody looking at their past, you know, and how did this just sort of naturally and unwittingly occur in my life? I think when you're coming from that type of place, that's I think when I want to use the Esther Hicks vibrational stuff. That's when I think you're most easily and purely, I guess, just broadcasting the signal that is a sum total of everything that you are believing and thinking. And also, I think when you're like 20 years old, that can be a lot, regardless of your experience up to that point. I think that can be a lot more pure than it is when you're older and analyzing things. And, you know, I think that this is a perfect example of a vibrational match, which, if you've been listening to Esther Hicks, you know, or anybody else really, who's just making a channel on here, you know, to sell some courses or whatever. Not that Esther Hicks is doing that. I think Esther Hicks is great, but it could be very easy to become convinced, I think, that that's incredibly simple. That the vibrational thing is incredibly simple. You know, I'm in a low vibe, I attract low vibe things. I'm in a high vibe, I attract high vibe things. I don't think it's that simple. I mean, for general consumption, on broad strokes purposes, that's probably a good way to look at it. But I mean, the signal that the frequency that you're broadcasting at any given time it's everything. It's everything that you have going on. The good and the bad. And so if you're, you know, like the confusion for this person, for Diane, is how did I create anything good from the worst point in my life? My answer to that is that you weren't only broadcasting a bad signal. There were obviously many other things that you were broadcasting besides your traumatic childhood, your recent experience, and the low point you were at with certain aspects of yourself. I think that if Diane were really completely in the gutter, which I mean, I've been there where I would say this was the lowest point of my life. I felt like absolute shit about myself. I felt like a complete piece of shit. But you know what? I still wouldn't have let some person come up to me on the street and start insulting me without telling him to fuck off. There was no low point in my life where I would have allowed that to happen or something, you know, just as an example. You can sort of assess yourself as having been at a certain low point while really there was still quite a lot of foundational shit intact. It sounds like from what Diane wrote here that there was still plenty of stuff intact because you know, she made Jack prove himself. She didn't just say, well, I'm a worthless piece of shit, so I have this guy, this nice guy who seems interested in me, let me throw myself at him. I think somebody at a lower point would have done that. I've certainly been at a point low enough where I would have done that in the past. So just the fact that Diane wasn't at such a desperate place, you know, I don't know. It's hard to say because I don't know these people and because I just have this little bit of information. But I'm just saying all of that to illustrate a point, which is that your frequency contains a lot of stuff in it. It's not just, I'm feeling bad, so bad things will happen, or I'm feeling great, so great things will happen. It's not that simple. If you're feeling really bad all the time, you're probably going to find that you experience more bad things. If you're feeling really great all the time, you're probably going to find that you experience a lot of great things, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to manifest the thing that you want if you're in a good state, and it certainly doesn't mean that you can't possibly manifest anything good if you're in a bad state. And that's because of this, as of right now, largely not yet understood frequency thing, that everybody is just throwing shit at the wall to see what sticks to try to figure out currently, myself included. So my answer to that is you, Diane, and Jack were just a perfect vibrational match. I mean, if you look at the story, it's an iconic love story. It's knight in shining armor rescues the damsel in distress. If you boil it down to its most, you know, its simplest theme, that's what happened here. So Jack and Diane show up and they're both ready, willing, and able to play the role that they played to create this relationship that ended up with happily ever after. I mean, this is a fairy tale, right? Obstacles in the beginning, they have to get overcome. Knight in shining armor persists. He gets his prize at the end. Sorry, just speaking from fairy tale perspective here. And we have the classic love story. So we have the classic fairy tale. So both of these people were broadcasting that signal, whether they realized it or not. And, you know, there's something very attractive about a woman who has much to offer, but doesn't seem to see it, is in a bad way, and is putting out the I'm gonna make you work for this vibe. You know, there is a male counterpart that fits right in with that, and these two frequencies meet each other, and it's just like unstoppable after that. I mean, it's not similar in it's just similar to all the other themes that seem to show up in relationships. There's like, you know, the person that's constantly creating themselves being abused and the abuser. It's like they just find each other magically, but it's not magic. It's this frequency. You know, these two frequencies meet each other, and it's just like, boom, it's on. So, and I, you know, from a psychological standpoint, I don't know, maybe there's more to that I just can't explain because I'm not in the know enough about that. But that's my explanation for that. You know, the beliefs create reality thing, I think that phrase is just way you know, that's just a way oversimplification, and language means different things to different people. So, you know, what I say when I say the word belief, my meaning for that, like what that the vibration of that word for me, whatever that word means for me, whatever feelings it evokes and all of that, could be completely different from somebody else. And this is one of the really rough things about trying to talk about all this stuff, is that, you know, for some people, they might be thinking of the things that they fear will happen, or things that they fear are true, as being a belief, when it's just a fear. You know, fear is not a belief. Thoughts are not beliefs. Even thoughts that you think over, you know, people often define a belief as a thought you think over and over and over again, but really you can think a thought over and over and over again, and if you don't really give a shit about it, it's not going to turn into something with the energy and power to become a belief that actually starts becoming active in your vibration. And all I mean when I say active in your vibration is influencing your behavior. When you look at this story, it's the behaviors that allowed it to happen. You know, one party was tentative, but still willing to give it a chance. That's a behavior. So many other actions could have been taken. She could have thrown herself at him, or just said, sorry, no, I don't do this. I'm not good enough for this, and I don't want it. I don't want to be hurt again. Get away. A lot of people do that. You know, and a lot of people, they're all over the spectrum on that. But same thing with Jack, right? A lot of people probably wouldn't have been interested in persisting through breaking down all the walls and helping this person, Diane, heal from her past and change and all of that stuff. It's the actions on both parts that tell the story. It's the behaviors on both parts that tell the story about what's going on with the people involved. So on this channel a lot, I have talked about, again, language. I really hate some of the language that I feel compelled to use, but I've talked about the importance of getting really brutally honest with yourself, because I think if you are trying to work with the ideas in this, you know, in this whole arena, if you're trying to work with things to make things happen on purpose, or to understand yourself, I think it's going to be really hard to make heads or tails of anything if you're not honest with yourself about things. So, you know, I think it's very easy for otherwise decent people to be completely lying to themselves about what they really believe about things. Like, somebody could have just at some point said, I'm going to be a positive person. I'm going to be a positive. I'm going to be a force for good in the world or something. You know, somebody could take on that idea. And then they sort of just then tell themselves, so I believe all the things a good person believes. You know, I believe in the goodness of people. I believe in charity, whatever. Just a whole laundry list of things that go with the thing they decided they want to be. But they don't actually believe in any of that stuff. They just say they believe in that stuff. They just tell themselves that. But the true underlying beliefs are then their operational in their behavior, in their frequency, and in what gets created in the outer reality. So that's just probably a bad example. But if you don't, and this takes courage, I think, because it can make you feel like shit sometimes. If you don't get really honest with yourself about what you actually believe about yourself and about everything else, then, it's going to be kind of hard to navigate, I think. It's really important, or at least it makes it a lot easier to know yourself and to sort of commit to accepting unemotionally and objectively, as much as possible, where you are, where you are right now, without judging yourself or any of that, because that just doesn't do anything positive for you or anyone. So it's pointless. So I think getting really honest with yourself about what you really believe, and sometimes having to look at what you've created in your life in order to know what you believe, is important. It's important. It makes it easier. It makes it easier to start to shift things into whatever you want them to be. So I think that is all I wanted to say about that. Yes, it is. I made some notes yesterday. Oh, I actually forgot one thing that I wanted to say. A law works the same way always. So it's fine if you don't believe that this mind creates reality stuff is a law. I'm not sure it's been proven enough at this point to call it anything like that. But if you do look at it as a law is something that works the same every time. So it can't just work here and there. It's working all the time. And I personally find it easier to look at it that way, because then it eliminates all of the confusion about stuff like randomness. If you just start looking at everything in this area through the eyes of the law, and that it's always playing out, it eliminates a lot of possibilities, makes it easier for you to figure things out, I think. I don't take randomness as a possible explanation for anything ever at this point. And it just makes everything more simplified and easy for me, at least, to start to work with. So that is the only other thing I wanted to say. You don't have to believe in the law. You don't have to believe in anything in order to improve your life drastically. My advice would be, if this is still too confusing, if it's still too unscientifically proven for you, all you need to do is just start telling yourself, I can do it all the time. I can do it. Cultivate that feeling of I could do anything, and attempt to keep yourself in an up vibe. I know everybody hates that, but there is a lot of merit to that. A lot of good stuff happens mentally when you keep yourself legitimately in a high state, not feeling like shit, but pretending to feel good, or feeling like shit and telling yourself you feel good, but actually finding a way out of any sort of, low vibe. Just doing stuff with like those concepts alone will improve your life dramatically. So that's it. Have a great day. I'll link to Tim's video in the description.